Hey everyone, this is Pete. Welcome back to Atari A to Z, a series of short playthroughs of Atari 8-bit games, some which I grew up with and some which are new to me. Today is one of the former. Today we're looking at Dan Strikes Back. This was a 1984 release by English Software and the sequel to Diamonds, which we've previously seen on this series a while back. In the D's, in fact. This game was programmed by the same creator as Diamonds, Simon Hunt, and it was inspired by an earlier release from English Software called Firefleet. Hunt was very taken with Firefleet's vertical scrolling, and so he wanted to incorporate vertical scrolling into a new project of his, and that ended up being Dan Strikes Back. Now, Firefleet was a shoot 'em up, sort of a rough contemporary of Caverns of Mars, but Hunt wanted to do something a little bit different with that vertical scrolling technique. So he took the idea of Digger Dan collecting things and moving around a maze and that sort of thing and incorporated vertical scrolling into it as well. So he decided to incorporate the sort of collection aspect of games like Pac-Man and of the Bounty Bob series like Miner 2049er and Bounty Bob Strikes Back. And he wanted to include the idea of sections that unlocked as you progressed, because he felt that it gave the game much more of a sort of puzzle feel and gave the player satisfaction of sort of progressing as you went through the game. There was also going to be a third game in the Diamond series that was called Return of the Fungi, so he's obviously going for a sort of vaguely Star Wars inspired trilogy at one point, but that third one never happened. In that third game, Hunt told, I think it was Retro Gamer, that Dan was going to be sitting in the middle of the screen and his longtime nemesis, Brian the Blob, who also appears in Dan Strikes Back, would be attacking him with mushrooms. And there would be a sort of Missile Command style element of you having to blow up the spores that came from mushrooms and they'd explode and do chain reactions and all sorts of things like that. But sadly, that project never got anywhere. Hunt made the title screen and nothing else, so there's not even a prototype out there for people to fiddle around with and finish off. But if you're feeling up to the challenge, then by all means have a crack at making the third Diamonds game. But anyway, even without Return of the Fungi, Dan Strikes Back is a solid finale to the series, and it's a fun game that I enjoy playing. So, let's go play Dan Strikes Back.
Okay, here we are with Dan Strikes Back, the sequel to Diamonds from 1984 by Simon Hunt and released by English Software. And as you can hear, we've got a sort of nice remix of the original Diamonds theme here, which I think is probably a piece of classical music. I'm not sure what it is offhand, but here's a quick preview of the challenges we're going to be facing. I'll explain a little bit about what's going on with those shortly, but our aim is to get that giant diamond down at the bottom. So, the story here is that at the end of Diamonds, not that there was an end to Diamonds, but at the end of Diamonds, Digger Dan found this massive, incredibly valuable diamond. But Brian the Blob, being the jealous type, he stole it and locked it in his vault. And so what we're trying to do here is raid Brian's vault and recover the diamond. And we do that over the course of several different phases. So this first one here, it's pretty straightforward. We have to trample all of the mushrooms. And this game uses the same kind of physics as Diamonds. Although you can't actually dig in this one, it still has the same thing where if there's not anything on either side of you, then you're not able to climb up a pathway. If there's a gap of a single square like that, you can hold on. But if there's anything larger than that, you're not able to climb up that passageway. And so that means... Oh no! And so that means to get around the level, you've got to sort of plan your route out fairly carefully, spot ways that you will and won't be able to go, and make sure you hit everything you're supposed to. So there's quite a strong puzzle element to this game, which I really like. It gives it a feeling where it's obviously connected to Diamonds in terms of its presentation and so on, but it's also noticeably distinct. Alright, so this second phase here, we don't have to get all the mushrooms in this one, but we will score points for them. Oh no! All you have to do in that second phase is get all these small diamonds, which is a lot more difficult than it looks. So let's have another go. I've never beaten this game, by the way, so you're probably not going to see all the stages. Largely because that happens. So Brian the Blob is a fairly straightforward enemy in this, who just sort of follows you around, but the other enemies all sort of rise up from the bottom of the vault, and they take reasonably erratic patterns. Or some of them come down from the top as well. But because their movement patterns are a bit erratic and they don't pay any attention to walls and stuff like that, you can sometimes end up in a position where you feel like death is kind of unavoidable. Although you do move quickly enough that you can probably... Oh no. Ooh, that was close. Yeah, you do move quickly enough that you can get out of trouble most of the time just by running away, as long as you're quick to respond. But you also have to bear in mind things like those movement restrictions as well, so... No sense running away down a passageway that you wouldn't be able to climb up, so... Alright, just a few more mushrooms to go. And then that will open the doors for us down at the bottom. And then we can proceed through. Those large mushrooms there, those are worth more points, as you might expect. So those just appear randomly. Again, you don't have to get them or anything. Oh no, open. Ah. This is the other tricky thing about the second phase there, is you've got those doors which open and close on a timer. And so you need to try and avoid getting stuck by one of those. Because they take quite a long time to open. Like, long enough that it's not usually practical to wait out Brian. Alright, not doing too badly. But that does also mean you don't need to cover the whole level. You can just prioritize... Uh-oh. Oh, lucky. Lucky break. Oh, I think we might have done it. Oh, God. Right, so on to the next phase, where we have the spider from Necromancer, apparently. So, this one again, we've got to trample all the mushrooms, I think, but the trick here is that those spider webs will keep you stuck for a little while. So you have to break through them at a time when Brian's not going to get you. So this is a bit more of a sort of chase sequence, almost. Okay. Oh no! That's the best I've ever done in this game, so that's something. Okay, another go. I think there's 5 phases altogether. It's either 5 or 6 altogether. And so the later phases end up sort of combining all the elements together. And so it's a sort of case of use everything you've learned to clear the game. And then, as was usually the case for games of this period, once you clear it, that's not the end. You just go back to the beginning and you do it again, but faster. So, like Diamonds before it, you very much have this sort of endless arcade appeal about it. You can just keep playing, however good you are. Or however good you're not, as the case may be. Oh wait, Brian, you suck. Yeah, I always like the 2 Digger Dan games. Like I said back when we covered Diamonds, I think I actually played Diamond. Oh no! That's what I get for talking, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, like I said back when I covered Diamonds, I think I played Diamonds before I played stuff like Dig Dug and so on. And because there was sort of a little bit more depth and interest to Diamonds than than Dig Dug. I always found myself enjoying it a little bit more, despite Dig Dug being the more well-established classic. I mean, I still love Dig Dug as well, don't get me wrong, but I just found Diamonds a bit more interesting to play. And this is obviously a really interesting twist on the... Oh no! Death! This is a really interesting twist on the sort of maze collect 'em up formula. So again, I'm not going to say it's better than sort of established classics like Pac-Man. Oh no, that's all gone wrong, hasn't it? Open! Those doors are a nightmare. Yeah, I'm not going to say this is better than established classics like Pac-Man or anything like that, but it's certainly a distinct experience, and it's nice in that it's trying to do something a little bit different. It's not just being a straight clone of Pac-Man, because during the 8-bit era there were a lot of clones of well-known arcade games, and more often than not they didn't really try to do anything unique with the formula. And so you'd get games that were just Pac-Man with different graphics and maybe a slightly different maze if you were lucky. But they didn't do anything mechanically distinct. Whereas in this you've got the distinctive behaviour of the enemies. You've got Brian as your primary antagonist. You got the movement restrictions, meaning that you have to plan your route out a little bit more carefully than you might otherwise have to. And you got the and you got the different phases with the different hazards. Yeah, it's just a really pleasing little maze game that I really like. And I'm bad at this game. Yeah, I believe this was unique to Atari 8-bit, exclusive to Atari 8-bit as well, so... Like I've said before on this series, that when people think back to the 8-bit microcomputer era these days, most people tend to think of the ZX Spectrum and the Commodore 64. And sort of the big name games that came out for those, many of which came out on both platforms. Which is kind of a bit of a shame, because it means that platforms like the Atari 8-bit, having completely unique titles, kind of get a bit lost to history sometimes. Which is one of the reasons I wanted to start doing this series in the first place, is just to highlight some of the games that I grew up with that, when I've spoken to people, no one seems to have heard of, so... It's like, if you speak to someone, even someone who never owned a ZX Spectrum, they know about Horace Goes Skiing and Horace and the Spiders and that sort of thing, but because the Atari 8-bit range wasn't quite as well known as the Spectrum and the Commodore 64, or at least isn't as well known today. This is bad, isn't it? Oh, we're good. Yeah, because the Atari 8-bit wasn't anywhere near as well known, or doesn't have quite as much of a sort of casual retro scene, I guess you'd call it. Because there is still a very, very active Atari scene. As we've seen, things like the software competitions and things like that we've seen titles from on this series already. But the people who are more sort of casually into retro gaming and retro computing, those are the sort of people who will have heard... Oh, death. Those are the sort of people who will have heard of the Commodore 64 and the ZX Spectrum, but if you mention the Atari 8-bit to them, or the Atari 400, a lot of them will go, oh, the what? I've never heard of that. Which is a shame, because there's some really, really great games on Atari 8-bit, as we've seen. Oh. I'm getting better at this game now. Like I say, I could never get onto the spider stage before. And I have now. So that is the start, at least. And then I go and do something like that, which is less good. Right. Absolute concentration time. Oh, God. Old games are hard. You youngsters with your Dark Souls, you don't know you're born. No, the reason modern... Sorry, cat on my keyboard. The reason modern difficult games like Dark Souls are so well regarded today is because they kind of channel a lot of the same ideas as these older games. So they're all about practice, they're all about recognizing patterns. They're all about completely understanding the mechanics of the game so that you can take full advantage of them. Well, those diamond positions are randomized, aren't they? That's cool. Still, no time to enjoy that because I'm dead again. Right, this is going to be the last go. Because I don't think I'm going to get any further than this. But this is the last try. So let's make it a good one. I always found something incredibly satisfying in a sort of collecting maze games like this. I've got a cat attacking me. Excuse me if you hear any strange noises. Hello, Patty. What can I do for you? Patty would like a cuddle. I'm a little bit busy, Patty. I'll give you a cuddle in a minute. Oh, you do like participating, don't you? It's nice. Patty is one of the neediest cats I've ever met. Which is kind of nice in a way. I mean, it's sad that she got... This is completely off topic now, but I don't care. And it's sad that she sort of got into that state in the first place because she was a rescue cat and she'd been abandoned. And so she obviously had some issues with sort of worrying about being left alone and stuff as well. And you can still see that today because particularly... Oh, I've locked myself in. Great. Yeah, you can still see that today because particularly when I go out to do something, like when I go out to the gym or if I go out to work or something and my wife is still home, she will sit at the door and she will cry because she doesn't know where I am. Which is really sweet in some ways, but it's also kind of tragic. Still, she's got a happy home now. And she seems to like living here, and she seems to like me very much, so that's all that matters, really, isn't it? I know I said that was the last one, but one more, because I was distracting myself by telling sad tales of abandoned cats. This time, we will have true, absolute concentration. Absolute focus. Completely and utterly in the zone. The zone of death. Come on, dig it down. You're better than this. Yeah, I was halfway through saying something a little while ago. And that was whenever I'm playing maze collecting games like this, like Pac-Man is the best example. I always find it incredibly satisfying. When you get like those long strings of things to collect, like an entire screen width worth of things to collect. I've talked a little bit previously on this series and the Mario Gamer podcast and a few other places as well about something I feel that I believe is either synesthesia or related to synesthesia, which is where sort of certain things I find satisfying in gaming in particular, but also elsewhere in life as well. Certain things I find satisfying, I almost feel like I can sort of taste them. I'm not sure if it's taste or if it's kind of texture, mouth feel, as pretentious people would call it. But yeah, certainly collecting an entire screen width worth of things in a maze game is something that tastes great. Alright, let's try and do a bit better. So stay well out of the way of the falling enemies. We're miles ahead of Brian at the minute. Oop. A little bit concerned about that spider. Oh no! How irritating. Well, I think we'll leave that there for now before I get too frustrated. But that was enjoyable. I enjoyed that. It's been actually been a while since I played this game in particular. I played Diamonds a bit more recently than I played this. And in fact, I couldn't remember a great deal about how this game worked. But having revisited it now, yeah, I really like it. It's one that I'm going to sort of come back to a bit more, I think. A lot of fun. So that is Dan Strikes Back by English Software, composed by Simon Hunt, for Kate, apparently. Anyway, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please help out the channel by leaving a like or a comment and subscribing. New episodes of Atari A to Z are on Tuesdays and Atari ST A to Z on Thursdays. Check out atariatoz.wordpress.com for a full archive. Do please also check out my other projects moegamer.net, where I explore Japanese and Japanese-inspired games from yesterday and today, and videopackgames.wordpress.com, which aims to catalogue the small but well-formed library of the Philips G7000 Videopack computer, also known as the Magnavox Odyssey 2. You can also support my work on Patreon or buy me a coffee. You can find links to do both down in the video description. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.